The purpose of this tutorial is to learn how to make a data table using Microsoft Excel. Specifically, in Mr. Voigt's class, we are working on the trebuchet experiment. Your packet has a data table that looks similar to this. Now we want to reproduce that in an Excel spreadsheet so that we can use it for the next step, which is to make a graph. The first step is to open an Excel spreadsheet. Once I have my spreadsheet open, I can simply type the values into the any cell that I wish to start from using the information from the data table in our packets. So in this first cell, I'm going to put weights added. In the second one, I'll put counterweight mass. Make sure you include the unit. Next cell, trial 1, trial 2, trial 3, trial 4, and then finally the average. Now, it's important to know that I can move side to side, or I can move to the right using the arrow keys, or I can hit tab to move to the right one. If I hit enter, I'm going to move down one cell at a time. Now you can see here that our the information in our cells is hard to read. Some of the words are too big. What I can do then is I can highlight these, select format, cells, alignment, and I'm going to say wrap text. If I wrap the text, it will do what it's just done there. Now I still have counterweight mass kind of broken up, so I can move my cursor up to the side of the cell and just drag that over so that it fits in one cell. If I want to make this look a little bit nicer too, I can go back and go to Format, Cells, and I can also ask it to center these things vertically and horizontally, which makes it look just a little bit more appealing. Okay, now I'm going to continue to add the information from the original data table in my chart. Going down, I have 4, 8, 12, 16, and 18. Now the rest of this information is stuff that we have to fill in based on our experiment. Before I get to that, I am going to show you how to format your data table so that it has nice grid lines. So first of all, I'm going to highlight all the cells that I want the grid lines for. I'm going to go back up here to Format, choose Cells, choose Border, and then I'm going to click Outline and Inside. Now that will give me a nice set of grid lines for which my information can be put in there. The counterweight mass, you'll fill that in based on the raw data from your lab. I'll just put in some numbers here just to make it work for us at the moment. Okay. It's also important to note that we need a title for our data table. So I'm going to highlight the cells on top of the data table. And I'm going to come up to this little button, and when it comes up, it's going to say Merge and Center. So I'm going to click on that. And what that does is that takes all of these 7 cells, and it actually treats them as one cell. Now I can just highlight that box and type whatever I want my data table to say. So I'll call it Table 1. Projectile distance in centimeters while changing counterweight mass, and I'll mark that off in grams. Hit enter, and now you have a title for your data table. So again, I'm just going to fill in the information now based on trial 1, 2, and 3. So I'm just going to type in some random numbers. Okay, now that I have all of my data entered from my raw data in the experiment, I have left over the average. Now you could go ahead and use a calculator and calculate the averages of those 4 things, but I can do it easier with an Excel spreadsheet. If I click on the cell that I'm requiring the average for, I can go up to this function button. It says insert function, so I'll click on insert function. And what comes up is an insert function dialog box. Notice that average is highlighted there. So I'm going to click OK. If average is not highlighted, just simply scroll through and find average. Chances are it's going to be right near the top. But now that I have average highlighted, I'm going to click OK. And then it asks me to find the average of what cells. So I'm going to click on the little graph button. And I'm going to highlight the cells that I require the average for. And in this case, it happens to be E8 through H8. Click that little box again in the upper right hand corner and then hit OK. So my average comes out to be 155.75. Now to make this easier on myself, if I move my cursor over the very right bottom corner of that cell so that it changes into a smaller cross, click and drag, that will copy that function down to the rest of those cells. And so now I have the averages of all 4 of my pieces of data. Now that I have my data table made, I can simply highlight this, copy and paste it back into a Word document, or I can just leave it as an Excel spreadsheet, print it off from there, or do whatever. It's important to note also that you can still go back and format these things, make sure that things are centered, or do what you need to make them look nice. For instance, you could shade every other row, and you can do that by highlighting a row, and if you hit Control, then you can highlight multiple things at the same time. And now I'm going to go back up to Format, hit Cells, go to Patterns, and then Cell Shading. I'm just going to click a color for cell shading and hit OK. Now what that does is it shades some of the cells in my graph or my data table, and it makes it a little easier to read from left to right. Go ahead and play with things to make sure it looks the way that you want. You don't want it to be gaudy. You don't want it to be unprofessional, but make sure that you set it up so that it's easy to read and you can understand what it's supposed to be. So that is how you make a table using an Excel spreadsheet. Make sure, by the way, that you do not put units in these different cells, because the next step is to take the information from this data table and turn it into a graph.